Okay, so this is the follow-up video to where I asked you to answer some questions about the flood. And so that was Genesis 6:5 through 9:17. And if you were like me, and I'll probably make two videos here. There's a lot to unpack. It's longer than Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. If you're like me, when you sat down to read this, I remember, I wanted to read the Bible. I remember as a youth, I wanted to read the Bible from cover to cover. And I remember there were particular times in the Bible, particularly Genesis, where I would just struggle. I would just really struggle for meaning, struggle to follow. And I remember I read an old King James version, so I thought it's just my ineptitude. It's really my ineptitude as a reader, trying to understand and trying to figure out what's meant, trying to figure out the words. And so I really put the ownership of that on me, not being able to understand. If you really struggled, because I don't know how many times people sit down, just try to read what's there. This is a very difficult passage to make it through, because it a lot of times seems duplicative. A lot of times it seems like it's going back and forth. If you start to answer some of those questions, hopefully some things started to emerge. And I'm going to put this in, I will say this, it is not you. It's kind of like, the old breakup line. It's not you, it's me. It isn't you. The text is very difficult to make it through. It's not really an issue. I mean, yes, we have layers of translation coming from Hebrew to, if you go to Greek, if you go to Latin, if you go to English, if you go to modern English, there's 5 different so there are those issues, but translators try to stick faithfully to, when they translate one word a certain way, they try to stick to it, because when the Hebrew words are used, they try to stick to, I'm not going to say it means something else or use a different word to substitute it somewhere else, generally speaking. So if you had trouble with this, you're not alone. You're not alone. It's hard to make it through. So I'm going to look at some of those questions. I'm going to try to answer some of those questions. And so if we're looking at that, if we're looking at these texts, they are really hard to make it through. And let me just go back to the question. Let me start there. What name or names are used for God? And you should pick out God or Lord God, right? So it's Elohim, same thing as Genesis 1, Genesis 2. Those same 2 names are used, Elohim and Yahweh. And then if you were able to pick out a difference here, it's like there's 2 different passages where it talks about one with Elohim's reason, using the word for God. Another one passage talks about Yahweh's reason for destroying the earth, and it's packed in there. Corruption versus wickedness, right? Evil versus corruption. That's a difference. Those are different words in Hebrew. It's like the name of God is different. How does the flood occur? In one, it's the waters of the deep are released, right? The tohu vabohu. Remember, I told you that was going to come back. I told you that term was going to come back. That is Genesis 1 language. That is tied to Elohim. And if you read the text, Elohim, God, allows the chaos, the watery chaos, tohu vabohu, to return. That has nothing to do with Yahweh. That's Yahweh does what? Causes it to rain. So one is this return of watery chaos. You remember that picture of that dome that we shared in an earlier video? Is the return of this disorder pre-dawn of creation. We're undoing creation with this tohu vabohu. It's really literally a wiping away with Elohim. With Yahweh, it's a rainstorm. Interesting, right? Right? If you match the term for God, God's acting differently. in these, I will call them stories. There is more than one story that is overlaid. There are two, and I will get to that in just a minute. There are actually two. How long is the flood? Is it 150 days? Is it 40 days? What? You know, how many animals are taken? That's tough too. I never saw this until I read this in college. I never picked up on it. Clean versus unclean. That's a big thing. If it's clean versus unclean, well, clean animals were taking 7 pairs. Well, that ark's sure a lot more crowded than what we thought with the 2 and 2, right? Versus 1 pair. Versus how many times does Noah enter the ark? There's a couple times in there where Noah enters the ark. I got a really cool way to look at this, and it came from, if I can see the book here, I don't see it in front of me, but there's a cool way to look at this, and it's by splitting out the story when the name for God is either Elohim or Yahweh. There's something very interesting that emerges, and I put that together on these slides. And so I'm using the red font here. Let me go ahead and pull this up from the current slide. And of course, I'm going to have to move that around. So I'm going to freeze this, and I will stop and create another video because I'm already going a little bit too long for what I want to happen. But what I want you to do is I want you to read this. This is the Yahweh version, okay? This is the Lord saw that the wickedness of humankind, Yahweh saw that. So the reason for the flood here for Yahweh is wickedness. It's not corruption. And my video just froze. Probably still going. Yeah, it is still going. So I'm going to stop it there. Had some technical difficulties, but I'll be right back.